Your affinity for guns is apparent. I'm confident you'll find something useful there as well.
Anybody who's played a Doom game knows why they're there: to kill demons. The first two games were exactly that. Creator John Romero knew what he wanted Doom to be, and he led his tiny indie dev team to success. When Romero left id Software, Doom 3 became, a bit of a departure.
The invasion, the demons, it's all exactly the same as the ancient writings.
Dr. McNeil, our assumptions were correct. The artifact is a weapon of unbelievable power.
But id and Bethesda had to keep banking off this financial juggernaut, so when it came time to create a fourth installment, fans were wondering where it would go from here and whether the next game could recapture the classic Doom magic. Worryingly, the developers were wondering the same thing. Development of the fourth Doom game, then called Doom 4, officially started in 2009, the same year that id Software shed its indie dev status and became part of the much bigger Bethesda Softworks team. That's a lot of development time, a lot of change, and a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. But id Software legend Kevin Cloud was put in charge as creative director. Having contributed art to games like Wolfenstein 3D, the original Doom, and Quake, Cloud seemed like the perfect person to continue the Doom series and take it further into the modern gaming era. But the modern gaming era was the early 2000s. The first Mass Effect, Halo 3, and Modern Warfare had all come out in 2007. Gears of War 2 and Dead Space came out the following year. The industry was absolutely saturated with these serious cinematic shooters, and Doom 4 would not escape their influence. This became the start of a long and dangerous road for id Software, one that nearly sent themselves and the Doom franchise careening off a cliff. You see, the original Doom 4 was not even close to the Doom we played in 2016. Because of the direction the gaming industry was going, Kevin Cloud and the rest of the developers at id were looking to put a realistic and cinematic spin on the series. What exactly did that look like? Well, the original opening level of Doom 4 perfectly showcases what kind of game id Software was planning to make, and a lot of that footage has since been leaked or shared openly by the devs. For starters, making Doom realistic meant bringing it to Earth in the modern age. The opening level originally copied successful titles of the past by using long stretches of story-heavy cinematics so you could get to know the world and its characters before an invading force disturbed the peace and pushed the protagonist into action. Combat was reminiscent of Call of Duty games, and for most of the opening level, players would be fighting humanoid zombies rather than actual demons from hell. And when you did get to fight the demons, they didn't look like what Doom fans were used to. Basically, Doom 4's opening level was a fairly slow crawl, and the rest of the game was shaping up to be the same, considering how much combat was inspired by Call of Duty and how any demon-killing action was going to come second to the cinematic story. You know, it's odd because you probably have a pretty clear idea of what this game I described to you would look and feel like. You probably know exactly how it would play. And that's because you've played it before. 1,000 times, but it wasn't called Doom 4, it was called Mass Effect and COD and all those other games we already mentioned. Obviously, those aren't bad games, but they aren't Doom games, and with development going in that direction, it's safe to say that things were not looking good for Doom 4. Something had to change. Ultimately, id Software and Kevin Cloud took a step back from Doom 4 in 2011 and decided that it just wasn't working, which is scary when you've spent years of time and who knows how much money making an installment to one of the most beloved game series of all time under a legendary publisher like Bethesda. Remember that this franchise was no longer helmed by John Romero. He was gone, and the team had grown exponentially under Bethesda. It had some growing pains to work through. The devs told Bethesda as much, and surprisingly, they listened. Rather than pushing id to continue the first iteration of Doom 4, Bethesda allowed them to essentially start over. This was a monumental decision, and while it should have been the turning point the team needed, it ended up just bringing out more problems. The entire dev team was scrambling. Several staff members either quit or were fired due to their dissenting opinions on the change. For a couple years, things were in turmoil. The details of this era of Doom 4's development are pretty foggy, but we know that Kevin Cloud eventually stepped down as creative director. It was honestly a really admirable and selfless move. Cloud loved Doom, and he wanted it to be the best version of itself. He recognized that his vision wasn't right for the project, so id Software started looking for a replacement. This is where a man named Hugo Martin comes into the story. Former Naughty Dog concept artist, designer for Pacific Rim, and lover of 80s and 90s action films, Hugo Martin took over Doom 4 as the game's creative director in 2013. After Martin's arrival, Doom 4 saw some massive changes, including a name change. Now it was just Doom. It was a simple name that fit the strategy moving forward. The devs were going back to the basics of what made Doom games so lovable. Arcadey, fast-paced combat, fun and intuitive weapon designs, and demons with predictable patterns and iconic designs. Sounds like it was smooth sailing from there, right? They identified the problem and fixed it. Well, not so much. Hugo Martin and the id Software dev team still had quite a few hurdles to clear that could end the reboot before it even got started. Let's check back with that opening level. With Hugo Martin steering the ship, the game's setting was changed from present-day Earth to a futuristic Mars, not unlike Doom 3. That COD-like opening was lobbed off, but in its place was just a big question mark. The game went from having a cookie-cutter cinematic shooter opening level to basically not having one at all. Still bogged down by the idea of making a more modern Doom game, the developers were agonizing over how to tell a compelling story and how to humanize the protagonist. They wanted players to understand the world and what their motivations were. You know, like a normal modern shooter would do. But once again, Doom is not a normal modern shooter. The team went through multiple iterations of this new version of Doom where players were stuck listening to monologues for endless minutes before they even got to kill their first demon. Now the action was fast-paced, the demons were killer, the weapons were fun, but the story dragged everything to a screeching halt and absolutely ruined the vibe. The devs had forgotten one key pillar to the Doom experience: attitude. And this was a serious problem the devs were working on well into the final year of development. That's not a lot of time to perfect the tone and story of a video game, especially one that carries the Doom name. Thankfully, the game's attitude and story would eventually be born not from a lengthy meeting in the writer's room, but from some of Hugo Martin's favorite movies.
I think we can work together and resolve this problem in a way that benefits us both.
The winking, self-referential, yet still badass tone we know from 2016's Doom was borrowed from The Last Boy Scout starring Bruce Willis. This heavily informed how the Doom devs approached the game's story, since you can't exactly tell a grounded-in-reality Call of Duty campaign-type narrative in a world that doesn't take itself seriously. But it's important that the people in that world do take it seriously. And so, from that idea, the final iteration of Doom's opening level was born. The opening level that 2016's Doom launched with was pitch perfect. Inspired by an iconic scene in RoboCop, it immediately set the tone for the game and pushed players into action in a matter of seconds. Players understood from the moment Doom Guy shattered his first skull that they were in for one hell of a ride. They managed to weave in those story moments, but they're quick and simple, and yet still totally over the top, just like the rest of the game. 2016's Doom is several planets away from the game's original vision, which is good. Imagine if we had gotten that version of the game, or even one of the later iterations that was still weighed down by exposition and lengthy cinematics. If a generic shooter had come out under the name Doom 4, the franchise would have been sent straight to hell. And not in a fun way. Fans of the series would have likely written off the game as an uninspired cash grab. Luckily, id and Bethesda had the sense to bring in Hugo Martin and give him full control. Not unlike Doom's original creator John Romero, Martin had a vision for what he wanted Doom to be, and he understood why the original games worked. The story of Martin's involvement in Doom is a tribute to what can happen when creative people are allowed to make creative decisions without worrying about what a board of executives might think. But it wasn't just Hugo Martin that worked on 2016's Doom. Obviously, it took multiple creative minds, tons of bold decisions, and a publisher that was willing to toss tens of thousands of dollars and years of work into the trash for the sake of creating a better product.
They promised me so much.
All things that are super uncommon in the gaming industry, and if even one of those factors hadn't panned out, then 2016's Doom would have killed the franchise. And that's all we have for this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe for episodes from all of us here at Nerdstalgic Gaming. Thanks for watching.